Так, ну все, go live. Hi, hello, and welcome to another breakfast with INTEA. I think it's again this time we're in different locations, and as always, I'm traveling. You can try and guess the country I'm in by my background. But yeah, just write in the comments where in the world do you think Sergey is? And thank you for coming. Thank you for watching if you're watching a recording. And hi, Ravis. Long time no see.
Hi. I think, yeah, we just did another one like 10 hours ago, but yeah. Bye.
Don't tell anyone. All right. What are we going to talk about today? I know that we're going to show, and let's talk a little bit about a real project, a real case, and then what?
Yeah, let's. Today we are going to talk about external subject matter experts, and for me, yeah, it's very interesting in a sense that I have worked with internal subject matters for a very, very long time until a couple of years ago. It's changed a little bit, and people started to come into projects that are not part of a client organization in any way. And it felt like, okay, does it really matter? Is it internal expert or external expert? It's still an expert. I mean, how different can it be? It turns out it's quite different. The way you have to work with them, the kind of background they have in e-learning and so on. So yeah, we thought it's important to talk about it because some of you might be in a situation where there is no internal expert and you have to attract someone from the side, and yeah, and how to deal with that.
If you had to summarize this kind of in one word, is working with people in expert role that are not part of your organization, is it harder or easier? Because I feel it can be any of those. So what do you think in purely your experience?
Purely in my experience, it is easier in the sense that this person is not part of the organization, so it doesn't bring in, the luggage, so to say, of how we used to do things here for the last 20 years. So in a sense, these people usually are more open-minded, but at the same time, they are also strangers to the organization, right? They have a lot of things to understand, a lot of things to learn about the company the same way as we do, because we come from the outside as an e-learning provider. So in certain aspects, it's easier, definitely, but sometimes it can also become very, very difficult.
So we can probably say that if you're looking for a change, right? If you're looking for a new way of delivering training, or if you're trying to instill some sort of a new learning culture or new approaches, then it might even be beneficial. Even if you do have experts in-house, you can look outside, and we're not talking about INTEA, we're talking about like subject matter experts, like people who are coaches in terms of culture or business practices or certain processes and so on. You can even product experts from outside of your organization, because they will bring this fresh wave of thought, I would say, but you will have to deal with the risks of them being strangers. And if you have very protective people in-house, and we've been in a situation where people internally can be protective of their knowledge or role, or they feel like their position is being challenged, it can even derail the whole project, right? And we've been a few times through in situations where internal experts don't even want to share and don't want to help us even build the course, simply because they say, you'll build this course on work safety and everyone will be taking it every year. What am I going to do, right? Previously, my job was to travel the country and give these little speeches everywhere. But what am I going to do now? That was like my favorite part of the job. And they would be like, yeah, I think the whole e-learning idea is terrible and you can't do work safety in e-learning way, and so on and so on. So they will try to undermine you, which is also a good case for bringing out an outside expert, just to say, hey, we want this to be whatever, ISO certified or something. Right. Speaking of the project, do you want to tell us a little bit about that while I'm looking for the slides? Because I have a few screenshots, but just explain what prompted us to talk about external experts in this case.
All right. Yeah, the customer is. I'll start from the customer so that you understand why the external experts come into the picture. So in this particular situation, we had to work with the State School of Administration, State School of Public Administration. So this is basically a body that is responsible for providing training for different government institutions. So it's like a school, like an educational body. And of course, in these kind of situations, usually topics can be very, very different, right? And government officials are taught on different subjects. But in this case, what happened is when the country and the State School of Administration started to look at soft side of skills, at topics that are not particularly part of what the government institutions do, then they of course had to attract external experts. And in this case, it was lean management and design thinking as examples. So basically topics that are kind of overarching, that are not specific to any ministry or state agency. And of course, usually these kind of things, these kind of topics are not covered by internal experts, right? Some corporations do have their lean experts, maybe design thinking experts, but not always. And the way we worked, the project it consisted out of a couple of topics, as I said. One of them is lean, for example, the other one's design thinking. The approach was also very different, right? So in some instances, we were the ones who had to find and select an external expert, but sometimes it was already the client, it came from the client side, this idea that, we know a person who's been doing very cool seminars or webinars for us on the topic, and how about you work with that expert and build something?
That's actually a very good idea, I think, for our viewers. So if you have a favorite expert that you work with on an annual basis, or maybe multiple times a year, they come and do some sort of training that you really like, you might consider inviting them to create online training as well, for a number of reasons, right? We're not going to sell you on the benefits of e-learning right now. You probably understand what they are, scalability, flexibility, cost benefits potentially, and so on. So you might want to invite them for, which brings me to another question. How did those experts feel about kind of sharing their knowledge and letting it stay inside the organization rather than coming there every year to retrain them? Did you feel any reluctancy on their part?
To be honest, no, because you see, it can be a problem in certain instances, but in this particular case, the understanding of the customer and of the experts was that by e-learning, we are building just, the kind of the foundation. The idea is that by having a design thinking course for government institutions or lean management course, it will provide with a basis. And inevitably, if an organization, if the agency wants to build on that, or they want to implement certain projects, they actually will be interested to contact an expert and say, you know what, John or Anne, we had the course, we have ideas, but we need mentorship, right? Or we need somebody to consult us. So I would say an expert that is very deep in the field and can really provide value will not be afraid of creating, some content, because these are complex stuff. This is complex stuff, You cannot solve the whole problem by an e-learning course. So they were actually interested, and I think they're more saw it as an advertisement, and a possibility to go into interesting projects later. Because what we do often, right, by building these founding blocks, we're actually making these courses, on topics and things that are, not so interesting to talk about every year. I mean, who's interested in repeating basics of Lean every year, same slides, nothing changes there very much. It's not particularly the most interesting part of their job, I believe. So
yeah, that's actually an interesting angle, right? If you feel like an expert is getting tired of a topic, right, or then you might suggest that, hey, why don't we do it one more time, last time, properly, with recording videos, with creating proper slides, with moving this whole thing to an asynchronous format, and so on. So that's another kind of way which prompts it. All right, before we jump into our next part, which kind of I've prepared, and I'll tell you all about it in a second, I just wanted to show off a couple of slides from that course. So it's in Latvian, obviously, for a state administration school, or maybe not so obviously in many countries. But yeah, design-wise, it's very minimalist, in line with overarching design of government websites and all government materials that we've been witnessing for a few past years. Pretty much every state institution in Latvia has moved to a single playbook on design, which I think is a great thing. But we'll have our design breakfast, and I like to use this as an example. We'll talk about this, right? So it's pretty classic, and it's as always, it's about digesting things like what is Lean into a very readable, easy to consume format, with certain interactions to keep people engaged, with quite a lot of material, knowledge checks, and so on and so on. What I'm not showing here is also we've done quite a lot of videos with experts, right? That was actually a fun process, because as I was involved in shooting those videos, it was interesting for me. So the way external experts differ from internal experts, I think they are more self-conscious in terms of looks and presentations and being professional. The good thing is that they are better public speakers than many internal experts, but they are very picky in terms of the final quality, and I really want this word to be pronounced correctly, and I know that I misspoke just a tiny bit, but let's reshoot the whole thing, because I can't have this inside this organization for posterity, especially that in this case it's a very large organization, in the sense that people who go through administration school, they end up everywhere in the government. So a lot of people will see that. So yeah, that's that was a very cool course. If you're interested in something like that, let us know, and we might arrange a private viewing with a little bit more detail on that. But for our kind of second half of today's conversation, in line with us doing this live and not rehearsing the slides and so on, I thought, what better way to talk about external experts as than comparing it to internal experts? And we've done, I think, at least 2 breakfasts on internal experts. And what I thought, you and me, we can just go through a few slides from those texts and see if the things we've identified about internal experts are actually different for external experts. And if yes, then in what way? Makes sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Let's do that.
All right. So this was one. Well, actually, I wanted to show you another one. I wanted to start with this one. So I think, and I totally think that is absolutely true for everything, is that subject matter experts are experts in their subject matter only. I think that is one axiom that you have to remember when working with any kind of experts always, right? They are not professional trainers, although external experts might be. They are not professional educators or instructional designers. So they might know about e-learning or learning as such that much, but they're experts only in what they are experts in. That's it. So you have to keep that in mind and not expect too much and not demand too much, and be prepared to kind of take a few steps in their direction to help them with everything regarding learning. Although, as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking that maybe the situation is better with external experts. What do you think?
Definitely, in a sense that, you know, external experts, when they are attracted, it's 80% of the time I see they come from a background they are already educating people on the topic. This is how they become visible to an organization. But usually that does take these webinar forms, seminar forms, and in that sense, they definitely lack the knowledge of how the corporate learning works, how the corporate e-learning works, what is the platform side, what is the content side, what can you do using those tools, you know? So it takes a much more onboarding on that side than on the side of what is adult educations. How do you, how do you make people engaged, that you need real life examples, you know? So it's a little bit, it's a little bit different, but still the assumption needs to be definitely that, first of all, they are subject matter experts, not experts in education and not learning for that matter.
Okay, so here are the 9 mistakes from one of our, let me hide those mugs, from one of our previous breakfasts. If you're interested, do find it on YouTube, right where you're watching this. It's called SME Mistakes. And the mistake number 1 was that a lot of experts come with kind of pre-existing assumptions about how things work, about audiences, what they know and what they don't, and they're not very eager to go in and analyze the audience. They will tell you, hey, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know my audience and so on, which we have seen multiple times can lead to, well, if not failures, then at least some problems or at least some roadblocks. So external experts, better or worse in that sense?
I would say, I mean, this is maybe not related directly to being internal or external, but definitely external experts do have more exposure to different situations, different companies, which doesn't mean that they know your exact situation better than internal people, but at least they are aware that these situations can vary. Yeah, and even if you come into the organization, talk about, you know, work safety for that matter. I mean, the problematics of each organization may be very different, although the subject matter is the same. But still, they're definitely bringing this fresh view on the situation. They see it not from the internal point of view, but from the external point of view, and that is definitely very beneficial.
I think, and I think they do realize this gap a little bit more in their, because they go from organization to organization, so they're more used to analyzing who they're talking to a little bit more, and in general they might be a little bit more business-like than internal experts who will say, hey, I know this company, I've been with it for years now. Okay, so another mistake, I think the idea was that experts tend to value knowledge over, practical sides of things often, and sometimes practical side of things is also valued, but definitely more than emotional side of things, right? They think that, hey, if I tell you, if I teach you, if I train you this, then things will change. Whereas we always, not always, but we often find that it's how people feel about certain issues, not their skill set, what defines the outcome. My favorite example in that sense is IT security, or sometimes even physical security, where it's one thing to know about phishing emails and hackers being around, and why passwords should be long and change frequently and stuff like that. And it's one thing to have like practical knowledge about what's a good password, or how to tell a phishing email from not phishing. But if people feel indifferent, and indifference is, for lack of emotion, is in the emotional category as well. If people really don't care about that, they'll still do that. Yeah, like I know I should report this, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Or I know that I have to have long passwords, but that's inconvenient, and I don't really care because who am I to hack? Like I'm just a mid-level manager or low to mid-level manager in this huge organization. Who's going to hack me? That's not going to happen. So they wouldn't care, even though they know how to be safe. They won't. They don't really feel this as an important topic. So a lot of training should be devoted in that case, not to building skills and informing, but changing people's perception about the subject. And experts, by definition, they are embedded into this topic, and they feel like this is important. So they will not just ignore the fact that people don't care. They will be annoyed at people who don't care, and will actively kind of ignore them or shame them for that, or say, hey, if you don't want this, like, why would I care, and so on. So this gap is not bridged properly. So what do you think? External experts, what could they be in that sense?
I think a bit more often than not, I see that external experts are a bit more concerned about emotions. Maybe because, they operate in a free market, so to say. They compete with other external experts, so they really have to to leave some kind of impression on their audience, on the L&Z. So they are mindful of that. Not all of them. So I would say it's a bit a better situation in that sense. And the best examples of external experts, since they know all these different situations, different companies, they sometimes hack this idea already. I remember I had one IT security guy in the banking industry. He was an internal expert for one of the banks, but he was also consulting some other banks. I mean, it's a close community, they're all in one boat dealing with hackers. And he was showing during those trainings, he was showing a real footage of how security is breached in other banks, and it was super interesting. People got very engaged. They understood that they can get in situations like that. So it was very cool, but it was probably because he had this exposure. He saw all of these examples. He could gather those examples, because if you are within one organization for quite a long time, you might not.
And if you are in an organization responsible for its security, and it's been breached some time ago, probably you're not in the mood showing off that breach like every time you do a training.
It depends on the company culture. Yeah, sometimes the culture is that if there have been mistakes, we'll be talking about them. But overall, I would say there's not such a big difference, but
okay.
But still a problem.
Okay. Right. So the next one, I think that one is quick. So maintaining appearances. And we were talking about the fact that experts, they take themselves a little bit too seriously, which creates a divide between them and the audience, which kind of is tied to this, hey, this was my mistake, but I'm not going to tell you about this, and so on. But I think external experts are way better at bridging creating this rapport with the audience, and naturally, by going through different organizations and still being in that job, they're good at making new friends really quickly. So they come across, whether it's a text or it's video, they come across kind of as more approachable than some of internal experts, although internally there are a lot of great experts in that regard. But I think it's just that the pressure on them might be a little bit less. On the other hand, like I said, they will want everything to be extra perfect because it's their only chance to impress the organization, and sometimes it's they feel like this is a sales opportunity. If they're external trainers, especially, then can go both ways. But generally, I think it's easier on them.
Maybe in the sense that they are kind of they are ready to engage with the audience. I would say, yeah, they're kind of, because they're used to, stupid questions, that sometimes experts think are stupid and stuff like that. So they're a bit cooler. On the other hand, they are in a precarious situation because some of their learners, some people from the audience from a particular company might know about that company more, not being an expert, as compared to an outsider, right? So it can be tricky. If we look at the next two mistakes, and I think we should take those together. There's too much information, little information. What I find interesting that with external experts, it's not like too much information usually not a problem. Usually they understand that there are boundaries. They are used to this 1 hour, 2 hour, or 1 day seminars, so they kind of calibrate it already. They know. But the problem starts when we want to produce an e-learning course with them, and we want to transform from face-to-face or synchronous to asynchronous. It sometimes becomes a problem because there's too little information.
Really?
In a sense that when you have a seminar, you have a lot of experience in the field, right? You don't need to think so much about examples. They will come naturally depending on the questions, depending on the discussion. So you are in a very flexible mode. If people ask me about this, I have 3 examples to give them, and these examples are always the newest ones I've just seen in my work. And when you talk to the external experts and you say, okay, guys, now we have to produce this course. It's lean management, for example, for state institutions, or design thinking for state institutions. It takes time to come up with examples. It takes time to say, okay, now this example will be taught without you present. You will not be able to answer questions. It's asynchronous learning. So it's in a sense that it's not that they don't have information, but this transformation of the format makes it challenging because they're not to do it asynchronously, if if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. With regards to language and terminology, we were talking about the fact that experts take for granted certain abbreviations where you have no idea what they mean, and they keep repeating them, and you just have to be brave enough and ask, and so on. Again, because experts are too embedded into their subject matter. With external experts, by nature, you invite them in situations where you don't have this internal knowledge, right? So it's something that's not taught from within the organization. Design thinking, you don't have like a chief officer on design thinking typically inside a company, or certain parts of risk management, maybe some legal things, ethics, whatever you're training. So that subject matter will be foreign to you, which can increase this risk. On the other hand, external experts, if they go from company to company and they teach, and we're typically, by the way, just to take a step back, in most cases when we speak about external experts, they're used to training different organizations, right? We don't just come to a professor of something in a university who's never taught anyone in the business world, just the students, and we ask them to participate in a course. We'll always try to find someone with some sort of training background or experience. So I think they will be less prone to use unknown words and so on, and they will be way more approachable simply because they work with wider audience and they're less embedded or sort of rooted in this narrow subject field.
I agree with you, Sergey, definitely. But sometimes they do need a little bit of onboarding on your internal language and terminology. This is what I saw.
Okay. So this is where the gap comes from. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. It might come in there because if you have very strict, very clear way of how you call certain things in certain areas, and of course, design thinking and lean are a bit more general, but work safety or compliance, can be a bit different. That it might create a problem. And generally, there's always this gap of information between an internal and external expert. As we while we're talking, I see that we're very often talk about that bringing in external experts is beneficial, but it all comes at the price of that person not knowing your organization well enough. There is this fresh view, but there is lack of data information. So think about it, onboarding as well. Which I think brings us to the question of reusing old materials. And in a sense that if it's an internal expert, there are some materials that are getting old, but if it's an external expert, some materials are just not relevant. This is where this onboarding is important. And this is when you shouldn't just buy it like off the shelf. Okay, there's a guy, he knows everything about design thinking, tell us. No, it will not work because some of the approaches, some of the ideas are just not relevant or have to be twisted. This is what I saw with, for example, the lean training. And our expert had a lot of experience with government institutions, so it was easier. But while talking to that person, I understood that the examples you have to use, the approach you use, the things that you emphasize are different depending on the organization and culture, and is it private business, is it public, and so on. So these materials, it has you have to be mindful about it. They might not be old, but they might be just not relevant.
And I think that will be echoed again with structuring along a wrong guideline. So in that breakfast, we talked about the fact that sometimes experts, especially they come from an academic field, they might want to start explaining material like in chronological order, right? So before I explain you the current state of things, I need you to understand how we have evolved into this state of things. Or so we'll start in 1921 when the Union of Coal and Steel was formed. And pardon me if my history knowledge is terrible, probably the year is wrong, but something like that, right? So before we talk about EU regulations 2025, we'll talk about how EU came to be in, before the war or whatever, something like that. Let's go through this alphabetically or something like that. Whereas it makes sense for learners when it's structured along their working process or along their daily schedule or something like that. So if you're talking about something like risk management, like try to explain how do you manage risks before you come to work, when you come to work, when you have lunch, when you're about to go home, and when you're home, something like that. It makes more sense than going alphabetically. Just places the knowledge on pre-existing shelves in people's minds.
Sorry, for interrupting. Just remembered one case, but I think some 5 years ago, colleagues of INTEA, or partners rather, who work in the field of psychology, they were invited to consult on something regarding, I don't remember the topic, behaviors or some, some other stuff for the, I think it was for the store managers. And to avoid this, talking along the wrong kind of talking in a way that will not be comprehensible for the audience, what they did, these two psychologists, they were they were offered an opportunity to work for one day as interns in a store to really understand what is going on there. You know, it was a big project. It was worth investing. So they were kind of, sent there without telling the people, kind of the actual employees, that they are psychologists. They were just said, okay, this is John and this is Kate. They are interns or they are temporary employees. So welcome them. They will help you, with putting stuff on shelves. And what I heard from these people, and both of these people, I think at least one of them has a PhD in psychology, it was very insightful. And what I heard from them, that they absolutely redesigned the whole program they were planning to implement, because when they really saw what is the problematics, they understood, no way are we doing our usual talk on, I don't know, workplace harassment or something like that, for example. So
yeah, so this could actually be worse in external experts. So you have, and also because they will try to always have their materials in one size fits all format. So if you really want to get maximum efficiency, then you want to kind of push them to adjust to your specific work processes or organizational structure, or how things are done here. And especially when those experts come from, like with the State School of Administration, the experts are typically from, they work with businesses, and things in government are done in a very different way. So even that takes a lot of adjustment, right? Okay, and the final thing is about the first impressions, or kind of, we were talking about the fact that you need to sell your story, you need to sell the importance of the topic. It starts with a cool name for your training. It starts with a description that focuses on the benefits for the learner. It starts with learning goals, which are formulated from the learner's viewpoint, not from the organizational viewpoint, because learners care about themselves primarily, and then hopefully a little bit about the organization. But I'm not really sure whether external experts are worse or better at that. I would assume they should be better, because again, they go from place to place, and if it's not their first gig with you, then and they worked with other organizations before, they're used to kind of selling themselves and selling the importance of the topic. On the other hand, they might just assume that, okay, I've been invited and I've been paid, means they're interested, so why would I re-emphasize that?
In a sense, but if we take a learner's perspective, and if we compare two instances where somebody comes into your organization, kind of somebody has to deliver a course, a training, doesn't matter what kind of format. And if it's an internal person to you, to a learner, right? So it's your colleague, maybe different department, different rank, you're still in the same company. So the gap, I think, is narrower, whereas somebody tells you, guys, tomorrow we will have an external expert on design thinking. There is more distance. And I think that for an external person, it's important to be mindful of that it will take more time and effort for them to build trust before somebody really asks a question and will talk about the problem that is very, very important, because this guy comes from the external side of things. Should
do they know?
Bring up this harassment case because it's internal to us? It's kind of, can I be sure that it will not appear on Twitter in 5 minutes? Hi, I'm here at INTEA. Great case about how, manager of a department.
Stop right there. We're live on YouTube. Just okay. This is where this is where the example just stops. Okay. Excellent. I have, I also, just in case, I took a few screens from another presentation that we did on working with experts, and it's this one. It's about training the experts, and things that kind of can help you make experts better. And essentially, there are just three things. Okay, we've highlighted one, right? The fact that, that this is the important slide from there, right? So you have to understand the limitations of experts, and that they are experts, in what they know, and not experts in training or your organization or something else. But I'll just refer you to, like, I'm talking to our viewers now. So find this on this same YouTube channel. I just wanted to highlight a couple more things from there. So with experts, you can do three things. You can train them, trick them, or motivate them, right? So if you if you feel like there is a reluctancy when working with experts, even though you've paid them to come in and sort of leave their knowledge with you forever in the form of e-learning course, and they might not be overly happy about that sometimes, you just have to think about motivating them, finding a common goal, becoming prepared, and then finding that report. Or you can also train them, right? You have to say, okay, like in that example with the stores where experts actually went into a store to work for a day. That sounds like an excellent idea for almost every case, right? So why don't you join in for one of our Zoom calls, like a typical Zoom call that we're having every week? You will just listen to how we talk, how we interact with each other, what topics are discussed, and so on, and that will help you create better learning for us, right? So you can train them, right? Or you can also trick them, and which I think is a little bit less of a problem for external experts, but we were talking primarily about internal experts, how you can trick them into abandoning parts of their materials and helping them just deliver the stuff that you really need. With external experts, it's like you've said, in this case, too much information is rarely a problem, right? So too much information. They're very good at adjusting the amount of things they want to tell you to the limitations that you provide. So yeah, just look at that breakfast as well. You will find a few things useful, I think, in there as well. And on that note, I think we're done comparing internal to external experts. If I wanted to summarize what we've talked about today, I would say that there's always risks. External experts are great at bringing fresh view on things, but you might need to invest a little bit more into onboarding them. And as always, don't forget that they're experts, not miracle workers. So even though they're external and you're sort of explicitly paying them and so on, you still have to work with them closely to get the best possible results. Make sense?
Absolutely. And I would only emphasize an additional point that it is even more important when you bring them to produce something digital that is going to stay in your company. It means that they need onboarding not only on how your company works, what are the key kind of aims, objectives, and so on, they have to bear in mind, but also on how your learning journeys work, how your e-learning journeys work, and stuff like that, because that might be very often the first experience they're producing, a digital material. So please don't forget that they will need your time and effort to understand what you're expecting.
Bring us as another set of external experts to help kind of fix that seam, bridge that gap, and make things go smoother. This is exactly what we do. All right, on that bombshell, thank you everyone for joining. If you're watching this in recording, don't forget to like this and watch other videos on this channel. Follow INTEA on Facebook and Instagram to get updates about upcoming talks. if I'm not mistaken, we're having another bi-weekly breakfast in a week from now, where we're going, essentially weekly.
Oh, actually,
these
sorry, it's
days.
2 weeks. No, this time it's
2
really
weeks,
bi-weekly.
finally.
It's
Yeah,
finally
okay. I might
bi-weekly.
have a Friday off then. Excellent.
Yeah.
So join us in 2 weeks. And if you have any comments or suggestions, reach out to info@intea.lv. We do read those comments, comment under this video, and get in touch. Thanks so much. Thanks, Raivis. It was nice seeing you, and see you in Riga soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care. Sure.